New Thought Media Network proudly presents Lindsay Leimbach, Practicing Infinite Possibilities, Fridays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. And now, here's Lindsay.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to PIP. If you are on the East Coast, maybe you're having, West Coast, good morning, coffee with us. And if you're on the East Coast, maybe you're having lunch. And if you're in the middle, you're having a break. I am so excited that everyone has joined us. Oh, let's see. I can even have a comment coming up. Wayne is here from Calgary, from Canada. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. PIP is practicing infinite possibilities. And today we have such a special guest. We have Reverend Kusala, who is a Buddhist monk out of LA that I have actually known for over 20 years. And he has taught me a lot about Buddhism. And I wanted to show you something real quick. This is Reverend Kusala. He married my husband and I. Isn't it excellent? Excellent. So I'm so excited to bring him here. And today we're going to be talking about New Thought and Buddhism. And we're going to talk about some quotes that Ernest Holmes said, and we're going to get Kusala's input on it. So let me bring him into our feed here.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Reverend Kusala. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation.
It is so magnificent to have you here. We had you last week and we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but that's life. That's suffering happens.
That's it. Always challenged, but we fixed it. Now you can see me as well as hear me.
That's right. Let's just dive right in. I want to show this quote from Ernest Holmes.
Got it.
Let's get that. Stop trying. Stop struggling. Begin to be calm, to trust in the higher laws of life. Even though you do not see them, they are still there. Wow, that is pretty powerful. What Ernest Holmes, and that is really the foundation of New Thought, is that there's these laws of life. You can't escape them. You can't get out of them. They exist, and they're operating not to you, they're operating through you. And I wrote that Buddhism and New Thought actually, come together. How does that come together in the Buddhist philosophy?
Well, I like the quote, but I think Buddhism would perhaps say something a little different, but that's because it's Buddhism. That the higher laws of Buddhism could be translated into the Four Noble Truths. The problem with the law is you have to have a divine lawgiver to decide for you what is right, what is wrong, what is skillful, what is unskillful. So Buddhism says the first noble truth is that life is ultimately unsatisfactory. Not always, but ultimately you'll be dissatisfied. Number two, the reason it's ultimately unsatisfactory is because we have desire, craving, a thirst that can't be quenched. We are attached and we have aversion. And those things work against us in having a good and happy life. Number three, thankfully, the Buddha didn't stop there. The Buddha said, I have found the answer to suffering. I have found the answer to suffering. And then he went on to say, the answer can be achieved using the Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. You can look it up on Google. You don't need to memorize it.
Good.
And so what we're faced with in Buddhism is not how to have a happy life, but how to find peace in this life. And the
Yeah.
way you find peace is to reduce and ultimately eliminate personal and collective suffering, the dissatisfaction that we all have every day. Sometimes we have a good hair day, sometimes we don't. The idea is to come to a place of acceptance with the way things are. And I say that cautiously because it's not simply coming to acceptance with the way things are. It's also realizing that other people are suffering. So we would jump into action to reduce suffering. That's why we would change things. The world is ultimately just the way it's supposed to be, with all the good and all the bad. But if someone is suffering, then the Buddhist would say, I need to assist that person in some way to help them reduce their suffering.
Now, I really love what you're saying on this, because we have to, if everything is the way it's meant to be, or everything is satisfactory, then they say, but what about war? What about starvation? What about cancer? What about someone who's homeless? But you're saying we still jump in and we do right action. We allow right thought, right concentration coming through. And right concentration and right action, that's what you think about, you bring about. It's this whole law. Here's another wonderful one from that Ernest Holmes says: life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what he thinks into it. Now, wow, that means that is a mirroring. What I see in the world is really what I'm putting out into the world.
Right, yeah.
What's the take on the Buddhist philosophy on that? Do they feel that life in the philosophy of Buddhism, that life is a mirror? What is karma? What is that feeling? How would you do that?
Well, I can't speak for all of Buddhism, but you'll find that the Buddhist perspective may be that life is an inside job, and
Yes.
we're creating it moment by moment. People think, well, it's all happening out there. No, it's actually all happening in here.
Yeah.
And if you want to change the world, you have to change the way you experience the world. And that's what Buddhism is all about, changing the way we experience the world so it will reflect back to us happiness and joy and satisfaction and ultimately peace.
I have this one. I love this. This is from Ernest Holmes. We cannot lead a choiceless life. Every day, every moment, every second, there is a choice. If it were not so, we would not be an individual. Isn't that kind of what you're talking about right now? That every day we get to have a choice on what we think next, what we feel next, where our thoughts go to, you know?
Well, let me amplify on this. That there's something called choiceless awareness, which happens when we meditate. And what happens is you're simply experiencing what's going on without any kind of choice or criticism or critique. It's just manifesting there, and you're the observer. You're no longer the participant. Okay. Now, Buddhism would look at the idea of we would not be an individual in a more positive way. And the deal is we have a relative reality and an ultimate reality. So the relative reality is we're all separate, we're all self-based, and we're all individuals. The ultimate reality is we are all interconnected and interdependent. So we feel the joy and happiness and the sadness and despair of all human and other forms of life. We have that ability because we're all connected. As an individual, we have the opportunity to turn away from that and to not let it affect us. But the spiritual path is a tough one. And the spiritual path is to prepare yourself to experience the suffering of the world and do something about it, which would ultimately be change yourself first and then help others change themselves. Because none of us can change anybody.
So let's take that. We all wake up, and we're most of the people that'll be seeing us, but some of us are outside the United States. Most of us are in the United States. So we wake up, and what comes on the radio, what comes on the news, what comes on our social media, a lot of times is the news.
Mm-hmm.
And the news is sensationalized. It's grabbing you to get your attention. It's delivered in a format where it wants you to lean into it. And it glorifies or expands the negative in the world. So all of a sudden, this negative comes in. And how do you ask? What's the choice you have? What would Buddhism say? How do you start your day? So what you're mirroring in the world, what you're not bringing in is negative and then mirroring negative. How do you make the world a better place when the media is feeding you it's a negative place? I mean, that's just practical things that everyone has to face every day.
Right. And I think one of the best ways to transform the negative would be through a metta meditation, a loving kindness meditation. So after watching the news and having your first cup of coffee, you would sit down peacefully by yourself or with others, and you could say, "May I be happy, peaceful, and free from suffering. May no harm come to me. May no difficulties come to me. May no problems come to me. May I always find fulfillment. May I also have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life." Now, that is something that would be important to memorize, because you could say that every morning after your first cup of coffee to prepare yourself for the day, which will be filled with joy and success and sadness and failure. Those two things, the happiness and the sadness, always work together. So it's never a perfectly happy all day experience, but it's never an unhappy all day experience either. We vacillate between the two. So the loving kindness meditation prepares us psychologically to greet the world and say, "I'm ready for you."
I love that. I was teaching a class yesterday, and I put up my arm like a teeter-totter, and I said, I said the same thing in the morning: go to gratitude, go to meditation, go to loving kindness. And so you can weigh yourself down in the good, because we know that things are going to be unsatisfactory in the day and push you. And hopefully when it pushes into you, you can still stay very balanced. But if we feed ourselves the negative, the news that we were talking about, we get unbalanced like this. You start the day and then it pushes you further down. So we have that control. Ernest Holmes said this quote. I love this one: practically the whole human race is hypnotized because it thinks, because it thinks what somebody else told it to think. And that is exactly what you're saying, in that, okay, you heard the news, or you're going to see the news, but get yourself not hypnotized by what other people are telling you. Get yourself into that right concentration, into that meditation spot, into the ability to be the higher consciousness of the observer, and look at it. So you can look at what's going on and you can think for yourself. You can say, well, this might be information coming in, but it doesn't make it true, or it doesn't make it true to my reality. And the higher reality, love, kindness, and joy, can exist even with that. And that's what I love so much about the Eightfold Path, because isn't that what the Buddha said, is that practice these 8 actions or thoughts or ways of being to get that teeter-totter weighing on the better side.
Yes, well, to go back to the quote, what comes to my mind is Ram Dass, one of my favorite teachers, Ram Dass. And Ram Dass said, in the beginning, we are trying to become somebody. So we're going to school, our parents are encouraging us. We have peer groups, we have careers, we oftentimes get married and have partners. And all these people are helping to create us and give us thoughts to think and places to go and be. But then Ram Dass says, in the beginning, our job is to become somebody. Towards the end, our job is to become nobody.
Oh.
And we go into nobody training. And this is difficult for people because what we're saying is that self that has been who you've been your whole life now is a hindrance. Now it's limiting you. Now it's preventing you from seeing the ultimate reality. And so the idea is not to kill the self, not to get rid of the self, but the idea is to be able to transcend the self and see the ultimate possibilities that have now opened up for you.
I want to show you real quick a picture because you said that.
Yes,
that's me and Ram Dass.
it is. I was there when that picture was taken. And it's such a wonderful picture because Ram Dass is such a rascal, or at least was a rascal.
Yes.
He's probably now is still a rascal in his afterlife.
Well, let me tell you, Ram Dass is a rascal because when I had this picture taken, the first picture he took with us, we were hugging him and he was going, and then I looked at him like he's sticking out his tongue. I knew I wanted to frame him like, hey, Ram Dass, you think we could have one with you smiling? And he laughed and he hugged us. And this is actually after he had his stroke. And so he was in the wheelchair at this time. And he too, just like you said, letting go of the self. When he spoke, when we see him spoke, he was slurring his words a little. He was much slower in pace, but he was letting go. And he was showing us how to let go, how to let go. It was really magnificent when we saw him. I want to just tell you my favorite Ram Dass. I love looking and listening to his old tapes. And he said one time, this guy came up to him and he said, Ram Dass, I'm a great meditator. I am really good. I can go up into the mountains and I can just bliss out and I can just, zone for hours. And Ram Dass is going, oh, that's nice. And then he said, but when I go into my apartment in the city, I can't meditate at all. What should I do? He said, practice in the city.
There you go.
If you know how to do it over here, hey, that's fine. But practice in the city. Practice. There is no failure. It's always a practice, right? Lean into the practice.
It's always a practice. And Ram Dass also said one time, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family. And you might and you might realize you've got a ways to go.
I got a ways to go. Well, this all circles and all comes back together. And Ernest Holmes says there is but one ultimate power, that higher reality that you were speaking of. This power is to each one what he is to it. Now, when I say that, what is that? You haven't read that I was going to put this up. So this is a spur of a moment when I'm putting on Kusala. What does that make you feel when you hear this new thought kind of idea that the power is always there, the ultimate power, but it has to come through you. I think this is, Ernest Holmes says it's your responsibility to be awake to it, to practice into it, to see it, to observe it. What's the Buddhist take on that idea?
Well, I would have to start with saying there is no ultimate one.
Ah,
That
okay.
Buddhism says there are many that are connected. I think probably the Jewish tradition started the ultimate one, which they call God.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at Hinduism, where Buddhism started, they have many different gods with a small g, and there's a hierarchy of gods from the strong god to the sort of weaker gods. And what the Buddha said about the gods and the one power is that it didn't there was always room for improvement, that they weren't perfect, and they weren't ultimately the best of the best. So when I see that, I think, well, okay, it's if there's no one power, then there's no one us either, that we're made up of a variety of things. And the Buddha, when he referred to human beings, he never said, this is Joe. He would say, there is mind and body, there are the five aggregates. He would always use more than one to describe a human being or anything else. So what that allows me to do is understand that one is not the ultimate good, that there is no ultimate good or ultimate bad that can be defined in a simple one way, that it's a variety of things that have come together moment to moment, changing, sometimes getting better, sometimes getting worse. And the ultimate goal for a Buddhist would not to come into contact with the one, but to come into contact with nirvana. And the Buddha said we're already in nirvana, we just have to realize it. So our job is not to go someplace and find the one, or go someplace and find the many, or go someplace and find nirvana. Our job is to wake up to the fact that we're already there.
I love that. I love that. And to me, in New Thought, in my opinion, and how I see it, is that it is already there. The person who doesn't realize it isn't there is my separateness that I hold in the ego called Lindsay. And when I can let go of that, then I become the part of that. It's already there. I'm not creating something, I'm becoming aware of it,
Yes,
aware of something.
yes, becoming aware of something. Absolutely.
Let me show this. I think this is a really terrific. Oop, let me get over to my banner and take my banner off. Here we go. Oops. Well, we jumped to the mud. I had something else I was going to show, but I hit the mud one.
Well, let's talk about the mud.
So let's talk about the mud. I want to make sure I get to my other one before we're out of time. We have so many things. No mud, no lotus. Without suffering through the mud, you cannot find happiness of the lotus. Thich Nhat Hanh. Now, before you speak on this, I want everyone to know that I got this from your Facebook page, and that you post 5 to 10 wonderful quotes with fabulous pictures every morning, sometimes at night as well. And I recommend everyone to follow you, because the wisdom that you put and the humor, you put so much
And
good
the
humor.
humor, that's right. That's right.
It's a light, happy, but really insightful site that I love to visit every day. But anyway, let's go to the Thich Nhat Hanh quote. Why'd you pick this one?
Well, this is a classic quote, and Thich Nhat Hanh gave a whole talk on this, and what it's sort of symbolizing is this, that we can't have happiness without the sadness. We can't have pleasure without the pain, and so life is filled with both, but oftentimes we focus on one or the other. I always want to be happy, or I never want to be sad. I never want to be in pain. And those are unrealistic viewpoints to have. So what Thich Nhat Hanh is saying, it's because of the suffering that happiness and pleasure exist. And the ultimate reality in Buddhism would be nirvana, and that would be not happiness, not pleasure, but that would be the ultimate peace that we could find. Now, peace is a hard sell because people think it's sort of neutral and you can't feel peace, you can only be peace, and all those kind of things. So it takes a bit of practice and maybe even a little bit of meditation to understand how wonderful peace can be and feel, and can be your co-pilot in every situation you find yourself in.
I want to give a real live example of what we're talking about. I know that no one really needs to know this information, but Kusala, I'm putting it out there. I went and had a colonoscopy. And when I was in, they wheeled me in and they had me hooked up. And the lady looked at me and said, "Are you an athlete?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm a walker. I'm a dog walker. I'm not an athlete." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because your pulse is so low." And that it was like, 55, 60. And I said, "I'm a meditator." And because I was breathing and I was meditating and I was really at that peace you were talking about, I was not happy to have a colonoscopy. There was no happiness in going into that procedure, but I had peace. So I was not in a stressful situation. And that was the healthy place for me to be.
Exactly. But it's a hard sell, like I said. It's a hard sell. But once you figure it out, what a wonderful end game that is. The end game is peace.
It means that when you're doing anything in the present moment, you're going to be okay with it, and you're not going to be stressed out, having an anxiety attack, indigestion, and all the rest. Now, let me show you. This is what I wanted to show. This is also, you have talked at so many New Thought centers, churches all around, Unitarian, Center of Life, with all different ones. And this one is out of Ventura, and you post these beautiful talks, 5 ways to change your karma. Tell us, which one is this one from?
Well, this is at the Center for Spiritual Living in Ventura, California. And Reverend Bonnie invited me to speak. And she said, "What would you like to speak about?" And so after a day or two of thoughtful analysis, I said, "Let's talk about 5 ways to change your karma." And she said, "That sounds good. I can hardly wait to hear it." And so that you can find the talk on YouTube. It allows you to understand a little bit more about karma, but also the 5 precepts, because it's in practicing the 5 precepts that we change our karma. And the 5 precepts are, really quickly, I will practice not to take life. I will practice not to take what is not given. I will practice not to indulge in sexual misconduct. I will practice to speak skillfully. I will practice not to consume intoxicants. So
well, I want to have you back, and maybe we can actually talk about those one day.
Yes, they're really good to talk about, because every human being, race, religion, creed, whatever you want to call a human being, that makes them better. Those 5 precepts make them better.
Okay, so now I put down in the banners here your YouTube channel, and also shout out, you have fabulous podcasts, fabulous. And also go to Urban, I've had this up before, I just want to make sure we have this up, urbandharma.org. I think you have over 1,500 pages.
I do.
About everything and anything, Buddhism in America, and talks, and your interactions with other religions, especially with Catholicism. I love it.
Thank you. And Facebook page is Kusala Bhikshu.
Okay, Kusala Bhikshu. Now, one other thing I want to say is, last week when we talked and we had the technical difficulties, so we didn't get to see you, but we had you as a black screen. I ended the talk, said, "We're all going to die." And you were like, "Ah." But that actually leads us into what I think our next talk we're going to have together is, how does death actually make you more alive? That,
Exactly. How can we live better if we have death as our co-pilot? And it sounds paradoxical, and it sounds like it would never work, but ironically, it works just fine. So
oh,
if we can accept death, we can accept life, and vice versa.
so I want to thank you so much. We've come to the end. Please, anyone who would like to know even more about Kusala, Reverend Kusala, and maybe some interactions that we can have on the PIP show, email me at centeredmoment@gmail.com. I just want to thank you, Kusala. I'm going to give you the wave and say, may you have a peaceful day.
Thank you, and likewise, may your day be filled with peace and happiness.
Oh, thank you. And so I want to thank everyone who has joined me from Florida, from Canada, from California. You've all been around. Feel free to please share this video. And also, a big shout out. I want to thank New Thought Media Network for having me here today, and all the wonderful things that New Thought Media Network does. Please remember to donate to New Thought Media Network. I'm trying to find my little banner as I'm speaking here, because I just believe so strongly, and I see that it's not popping up. But please donate to New Thought Media Network. They bring all this wonderful content. Please like and share all the videos. Please check out all the wonderful other speakers and ministers and meditation and prayers. Lots of love to everybody. May you have a magnificent day. May you have a magnificent week. Please remember to always know that peace is inside of you. And it takes a practice to maintain and understand that. But practicing is always good. Remember, PIP, practicing infinite possibilities.